point of what Ken and I are doing in every single time we gather is to paint a vision for you in order to have something to aim for. If we know that one of the definitions of sin, which I'm not going to get into the detail of that, but one of the definitions on the surface side is missing the mark. Well, if you don't have something to aim for, how can you hit it? Right? You know, there's got to be something that you're aiming for. It's like a purpose and a plan, a direction to go into, which we will be discussing on next week's teaching about the Orek and the Darek, two different ways of processing life's journey. So let's go into the Aleph Bait Ivri. And what I mean by that is the phrase Hebrew alphabet. And then we're going to talk about the Otiot. The Otiot, some of you might have heard that phrase before. Otiot, if you were to break it down in a very, very slight surface translation, would be letters. But the deeper side of that is signs. So we're going to go into a little bit of the etymology, which is a refresher from last week. If you saw what the etymology of sign is, sign, signal, beacon, incense, tokens. So that's why I was asking you guys in Miracle to see if you guys had watched last week's teaching, because it is all setting up for today to really make this personal and hit home right in the heart. So Aleph Bait Ivri, and here's Otiot. So Aleph Bait, this is where we get alphabet from in English. So very similar, Aleph Bet, Aleph Bait, the alphabet. And again, Alpha is Greek. That would be what they were wanting to use as the Alpha language, which is a dead language that everybody would come underneath. And that actually came from the phrase, the Aleph Bait Ivri. Why is this so important? Well, if I were to collapse this, we've already shared with you that the Aleph Tav is an idiom for the entirety of the languages and everything that it creates, from the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, and all the words that ever could be created in all the combinations are part of what makes this construct work. When we look at the letters themselves, and this, I know you guys, some of you have heard this, and when we get into the letter teachings themselves, which I promise is coming, there's a lot of work that I'm doing behind the scenes, hours upon hours upon hours, trying to get these things ready for you so that you can watch them over and over again. It just takes a lot of work behind the scenes. When we have a letter symbol, such as a Nayin or a Bet or a Resh, those of you who've been following us for a while know that there's constituent letters that make up the symbols. Are you guys following me? Some of you, if you are, either give me a thumbs up, nod your head. You know what I'm talking about here. So every symbol has something behind it energetically that has created it. And most of them in our modern language of it has three letters that make it, but it's really two parent roots. And this totally makes sense. Take a look at how procreation happens in life. Male, female, they create a child. So there's parent roots that have a feminine energy and a masculine energy that produces a third energy. And that's why these constituent letters are so powerful, because the two that become the third energy are creating something in motion that is trying to do something within us. So the parent roots are trying to energetically birth something new. Are you following that? Okay. Ken, yes.
Just on that, to connect what you said earlier, that exactly what you just said is exactly forming a constitution. The constituents of mother and father are within you, and in that resolve of expressing what it is, you are now forming, you're making your own constitution.
Yep.
When you complete this language, you will be well versed in your own constitution as the mother and father are one within you.
In other words, you've now unified into one universe.
Yes, you're now, as the letters perform the word has sentenced, and now it has pronounced it as a universe.
So having said all of that, constituent letters, guess what? These are constituent letters right here. Aleph, Lamed, Pei is how you spell the symbol Aleph, right? If you guys have watched, some of you, if you know the symbols, you know, you've seen that, you know that because I've shared it many times, that this is how you spell the letter Aleph. So if we were to summarize this word, we could just put Aleph there. And Aleph has so many, the word itself means teach, learn, instruct, 1,000-fold, join, unite, family, yoke, tame. I mean, it's endless, it seems like. So there's a lot that's going on with this. But when we want to unify it just into one symbol, it would be an Aleph. Bayit is the second one, which is in a word by itself, means house and temple. In the root of it, it means to build, and it means to build and family or associate with family. But this is also how you spell the symbol bet. Anybody know what Aleph bet together, put together means? You guys know? Ab. Does that sound familiar? What is Ab? Anybody know? Type anybody if you want to. You can either blurt it out or you can type it in the chat room. See how much you guys have picked up.
Papa,
Father.
Papa, Father.
Bingo! Father, father, Ab is father. Great. Am is mother, Ab is father. So if we have this here and it means father, okay, again, as an energy signature, I am not talking about how the church taught the father. Okay, I am not talking about that. Because energetically, these two letters, when they come together, Aleph and the Bet, if Bet means to be built and Aleph is connected to God, but yet Bet is two, and we know there's twin energies to build a family. What is this saying? The power to build family through twin energies. I want you guys to connect to this because we've been talking about Mishpachah. We have talked about in the past where Mishpachah draws the anointing out. And if we're building family, then one of the most integral points of what Ken and I are trying to get across to all of you is that when we know the sacred languages, we are building family together.
Through trust.
Right, through family trust. So if we're constituting ourselves and we're enjoining ourselves with one another, it means that we have the same foundation principles. If we know there's a journey from the Aleph to the Tav, and we know every single letter is pointing us in a direction to get us to the end of a completion, to be the strong leader teaching shepherds of the covenant and find the covenant of fire within, how much stronger are our family bonds when we do it together? Because the same building principles are there for all of us. So if I'm talking about an Aleph, you know everything about what the Aleph is. The family knows what the Aleph is. The family knows what the Bet is. So the frequency of the Aleph Bayit, if we collapse these into the symbol of Father, it means those who have united using the essence and the frequency of God, of the ethereal realm, of the essence that is of the unseen, that is taking those twin energies that come from that to build and unite ourselves as family and to build our temple as strong.
Now Father is seen.
That is amazing to see that, right? So that's what the collapse version is. I love that, Drew. I love the hands, like happy hands. Yeah. It's how to bring joy and whatnot without having to say anything. It's celebration. I love it. The second word, this is the word Ivri. Now you guys have heard us talk about this many times because this word actually means, anybody know what Ivri or Ivri Iver or Eber, if you want to say it that way, Eber. Does anybody know what that word means? Ein bet resh. I'm trying to pull stuff out of you guys today. I'm making you work. I'm making you work. Anyone? Wild guess?
Hebrew,
It is Hebrew, but what is the meaning of that word?
crossing over. Huh?
Beyond.
You got it, Patricia. Great job. It means to cross over. Cross over to what?
In a kingdom.
It does have to do with the kingdom, but in the actual, so I love that you guys are responding today. I'm going to keep trying to draw things out of you because otherwise I'm just talking at you, and I want us to start really pressing into this stuff.
You've entered into the mystery.
Yes. So when we talk about crossing over, one of the things that you've heard me say is that every single word resolves itself through the letters, correct? So if you see a word and you see the definition and you need to resolve it or find out more, the detail is in the letters. This is why I like the minutia. This is why I dive deep in the letters, because for me, I seek clarity. I seek things to be clear, which is part of the word Hallel, by the way, of clear sound, to be clear and to shine and to illuminate. If something is obscure, then I'm not working with the Hallel energy that is within me to bring something to become clear and of clear sound, so that we can unite together in knowing what the purpose of these words are trying to instruct us to become. So crossing over, let's look into what crossing over is in more detail. The first thing that I want to establish, so this is Ivri, and yes, it's Hebrew, but I want to establish right smack dab in the middle, because I'm honestly, y'all, I'm interested in the center of the word, because that has to do with your heart, my heart, our heart. I always look straight in the middle of the word. What is being conveyed at the heart level? Because that is where the frequency, this is our power generator. When we move from being entropic to negentropic, it's all about this. How far is my light and my radius extending out? Is it the minimum of 6 feet? Or is it 6 miles? Or 6,000 miles? How far am I radiating love? So having said that, let's look at the inside of the word. We have the letters Bet, Resh, Bar. Do any of you remember what the word bar has to do with? I'm going to give a hint. If you saw Drew's artwork that he posted between the 2 different brides, you're going to have a really good idea what bar is. Anyone? You can either type it or shout it out, raise your hand, let me know. And if you don't, that's okay. Again, I'm trying to draw some stuff out of you. I don't want it just, yes. Nice job, Drew. Yes. The reason why Drew typed barley, and the reason why barley is important, is the barley bride is one that has been winnowed. The difference between winnowing and threshing, between the barley and the wheat, is the barley tossed up in the air through the spirit, where it removes the chaff and leaves the wheat. The wheat bride, it's a little bit difficult, because they need to be struck. They need to be beaten a little bit. It means they're going to be hammered a little bit more than those that listen to the spirit to winnow them.
And our heart is not for that.
No, definitely not. That's why we're trying to present all of this, so that through what we're sharing, you can be winnowed. I don't want anybody to be struck.
We just have to have the ears. We have to be attentive to our own personal journey with the
And
road.
what the spirit is saying.
Yeah.
So hence why going through the language through the spirit will then winnow you, instead of life on the outside beating you up. Does that make sense? So when we study the language through the spirit, we get winnowed from the inside out. If you don't study the language and you want to learn through the world of life's hard knocks, you can get to the same resolve. It just is a little bit more challenging and maybe not so much fun, because it's still going to produce the same result. And I'm not saying that the winnowing process has been that easy for me either, because the shadow work is never fun. But I'd rather go through it on the inside than have the world beat me up on the outside to try to get me to do my shadow work. Does that make sense? I can retain relationships a lot better if I just do my inner work, instead of having all that outer dueling stuff happen in my life. Okay. So bar bet resh has to do with the winnowing process, but it also means the pure and the innocent. And it means to choose or to select or be selected. Okay, that's important that we listen to that and see what those letters are telling us. We have the ayin on the front, which is a letter that means to see or to know. You can say to see and know the big picture, or the landscape, or the fountain within. It's all connected to that. And then that is by seeing and knowing the purpose of why we're being winnowed, is so that we can build ourselves up and raise ourselves from our poor and destitute place to be first fruit leaders. That allows us to cross over into what? Anybody know what the yod means? Anybody know what the symbol yod means?
Back of life.
No. But Rick, Rick typed it out, power, crossing over into power. The reason why that is important is because much of what we have experienced in our lives, we have been oppressed through people that were using force over us, causing us to submit. All we have to do is take a look at what happened on the external with 9/11, of how much power we gave up due to fear that had somebody force things on us instead of taking our power back. And this being on the Suffolk side has to do with our shadow element. And really, if we were to go through the nuts and bolts of all of this, power comes from transmuting the shadow. And almost every single shadow that any of us will ever have is connected to fear. All of it has to do with fear. So what are we crossing over into? Taking our power back, getting rid of the shadow, elevating selves. And here's the beautiful thing about that little yod too. Again, Ken and I, we are painting a vision for all of you guys. You have something to aim for. And like I have shared with you, I'm trying to establish the why, because when you start studying the language at the very beginning, it's very, very dry. If you guys have been going through the flashcards, you might be finding some fun in it because you're learning something new. But after a while, it's like, oh my gosh, when do we get to the meat? We need to have the why established, because when it gets hard, when you start breaking down verses, and I have seen this, I have seen people walk away from breaking down the verses because it became too hard. The only way you're going to make it through is by continuing to push through when it becomes difficult, and understanding why we are crossing over, what the whole purpose is, and realizing that it's something greater than just us individually. It's building family. It's building family. And I don't know about you, some of us have had difficulties with our earthly fleshly families. And I know a lot of us really want to have those deep connections with the spiritual families, Mishpachah, because we're drawing that anointing out of each one of us just by being here.